author, columnist, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, talk show host, and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special edition, we are going to be talking what comes next for Donald Trump's legislative agenda. Also, we'll be discussing Antifa, terrorist organizations, and what it means to be labeled as such. Please do remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com. You can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. We're joined by Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, Jim Fite, to discuss what's next on Donald Trump's legislative agenda. And will Congress be a help or a hindrance for that? Thanks for being here, Jim.
Yeah, it's nice to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So, Jim, you're our, I guess in England, we would call you a policy wonk, as in somebody who follows the tracking of policies and stuff. And that is often used in an affectionate way. So please take.
Yeah, I think it's probably a more polite term for than I might normally hear.
Well, we also have SPADs and SPODs, which are like special policy advice. But anyway, you don't want to be a SPAD or a SPOD. We've seen Donald Trump's second term here, the first 9 months coming up, and he's got one major piece of legislation through, aside from like pocket rescissions, but he's got the One Big Beautiful Bill Act through that was quite wide-ranging. It covered a lot of things. There's a lot of things it's covering there, as Donald Trump might say. That's the first time I've ever done an impersonation on air. But I did notice that Greg Gutfeld recently said on his show, he says, when I was a kid, everybody used to do impressions of John Wayne. Now everybody's doing impressions of Donald Trump. It's a cultural shift, but an interesting one. So he had the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It had a lot of things in it. It was very, very... now, of course, much of that is being contested through law courts, because of course it is. But it was jam-packed. It was jam-packed. My question is, what's following? So there's been a rumor that there's going to be another One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which would really ruin the name of the first one. It should be called the First Big Beautiful Bill Act, right?
Or, Mark, we could say the bigger, more beautiful bill.
Oh, hey, Donald Trump, if you see this, give us a retruth or something.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the one. So, yeah, what would Donald Trump, with the cooperation of Congress, be looking to achieve going forward? Obviously, there's the midterms coming. But he's going to want some legislation to. And I don't mean to say this in like a marionette sort of way, but he's going to want something to dangle in front of the voters and say, this is what we've got on offer. This is why you need to return a Republican House and a Republican Senate, because we're going to get this. I'm sorry, what did you call it? This
more beautiful bill.
The bigger, more beautiful bill. And what we need a Republican Senate and House to get this through. I mean, that's pure politics, right? But what does he have, do you think, to offer going forward?
Well, with the new tariffs in place and this new, which, well, actually, I guess it has gone into effect now. The new increased fee on the H-1B work visas.
Yeah.
Like $100,000 fee. That's huge. I wonder if he's the administration has mentioned in White House press releases, when they're talking about increasing the tariffs and increasing these fees, about lowering the tax burden on Americans. And so I wonder if the next big thing, or for anyone who's ever watched the TV show Legend, where the main character, he was a writer, and he was always looking for the coming thing. And I wonder if the coming thing...
Richard Dean Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah. MacGyver.
That's it. Nicodemus Legend. And if he was always looking for the coming thing. And I wonder if the coming thing might not be major tax cuts. more major tax cuts.
Right. So we had the 2017 jobs cuts. No, not jobs cuts. Jobs. I don't know. Y'all like that.
Wanted.
Well, it depends on which side of the aisle.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Those.
They'll call it. But yeah, the tax cuts that were then renewed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And so to take that even further, that would be quite historic, I think, because I know Donald Trump likes to talk about the historicness, the historicity of every decision he makes, and they're not all of them are that historic.
Use one of my favorite words there, Mark.
Yeah, they're not. Many of them are not unprecedented, as a lot of people like to say. They're not. I mean, sure, they are what they are, but they're not always the historic lows or highs that he says. Right. But if a second round of tax cuts funded by, as you say, the H-1B visa fees are going up to $100,000 per, plus the Trump, is it the Trump Gold Card or something they're calling it, the Gold Visa Card?
Gold Card, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a million.
It makes it sound like a credit card, but
it really does. It really does. But with all that coming in, yeah, there's a chance that, he could probably get a lot of support through Congress for an even deeper tax cut.
Yeah.
But I wonder.
I was going to say, alternatively, or in addition to that, with more and deeper cuts into federal spending, especially some of the ridiculous things that we see, every year with the Festivus report from
Rand Paul,
yeah. And we're seeing a lot of the same stuff on the Doge website where they're pointing out all these things. Hey, we're spending this much money to do this ridiculous thing. Why? With deeper cuts there and job cuts, because a lot of what he's been pushing for is a reduction of the overall size of the federal government, which I think he's really hit on. I mean, he's really hit on with the small government conservatives and libertarians here is, put that beast on a diet and slim things up. So cuts for sure. But then of course, perhaps a paying down of debt. Our national debt is at, what's the word we're using here? Unprecedented levels.
Unprecedented levels. Yes. I'm reminded of a fantastic, my favorite Bob Hope film, in fact, which is The Lemon Drop Kid, and he sings a line in it: "Pay down the national debt. No, it doesn't cost a dime to dream," because that's I like many people feel that is never going to happen, Jim.
Yeah, that's it. It should, but anyways, that would be a big selling point, I think.
I think it needs to be
less likely than tax cuts.
It's to actually pay down the debt. It's something that needs to be institutionally instigated, as in each branch of each executive branch, each area of spending needs to continue to reduce on a regular basis.
Come in conjunction with the tax cuts and
but it can't be like one-off cuts, right? It has to be institutional.
Yeah, it has to be permanent reductions.
Yeah. It's on an annual basis too. Otherwise, as you say, you need to slim the beast down, and the more you feed it, the fatter it gets. We're going to be back with Jim Fight after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril. Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and Jim Fight remains Jim Fight, editor-at-large over at libertynation.com. Thanks for being
at least.
Jim. Yeah, and thanks for sticking around. So we talked about the One Big Beautiful Bill and Trump's further agenda that we could title, if you remind me of what that is again? The
bigger, more beautiful bill.
Yeah, there you go. That is you should put up a website for that, Jim, and then set it on when ready. So that's what we discussed what we think might be in such a bill. But coming into next year, and things are really starting to heat up already, is the 2026 midterms. Now, Jim, what do you think each party's going to be campaigning on? I suggested earlier in the show that maybe Donald Trump would be campaigning on the bigger, more beautiful bill, whatever shape that takes. Right. Not for him, but saying that you have to get Republican senators and representatives reelected to get this bill through. And that will be his pitch, I think. What do you think Democrats are going to be offering?
Well, there's the old standbys of abortion access,
sure,
and immigration. But Democrats, a lot of the Democrats have seemed to have kind of reversed on immigration a bit.
Yeah,
I mean, they still want reform, but they're at least saying they're ready to start backing border security, which is interesting, and also possibly a point that Trump and the other Republicans can lean on to say, kind of like, "Hey, we told you so" moment. But I kind of come back to the idea of this, like the Nope Act, for example, this narrative that the left has been pushing here lately after the murder of Charlie Kirk, of course, especially, that the Trump administration is applying pressure to get rid of sort of political enemies, if you will, like Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and anyone who has lost their job after disagreeing with Trump. Of course, it was because the administration applied, they put the thumb down and the company caved. That's going to be their narrative.
Sure.
But I could see that being a big talking point in the midterms of like, now all of a sudden, instead of being, they're going to kind of shy away from the idea of being the statist party and more of like, hey, in a way that's always been their narrative. We're the ones for looking out for the little guy. But I think they might really kind of dig down in that and sort of tout themselves as the party of individual liberty.
Yeah, it's here's the thing. Wouldn't it be great if voters of all stripes judged whom they voted for based on this is the person protecting the constitutional rights? I mean, I think the Constitution and the Republic would be far, far stronger if voters of all stripes said, looked at the candidates and thought, which one is best for constitutionally protected rights?
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one, Mark.
Yeah.
And treading very dangerously close to triggering a soapbox moment here. I am I am kind of famously not, for people that know me, not a card-carrying member of any party, and I don't vote party line. I when election time rolls around, I look into all of the candidates that are available for me to vote for. I'm not really concerned at that point with anyone else. And I look at, have they held office before? Great. What's their voting record look like? Because that's public information.
Sure.
Where do they stand on these issues in interviews and their voting record? And, the result, I say kind of nominally, it's not about what party they are. Now, because I hold certain beliefs, the end result is I end up voting for the people from the same parties, but
yeah,
and not the other. But yeah, if everyone would vote on the actual performance of the politicians and the platform, like what is the party actually saying it's gonna do, instead of just relying on, well, I'm a Democrat, so I got to vote for these guys, or I'm a Republican, so I got to vote for these guys, or, well, I heard on the radio ad that so-and-so said such and such, so I guess I'm voting for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, isn't it? Because such a way of voting, and this is a way a lot of people vote, but I think, but they do it based on, I would say not whole cloth information, because you have people who say, I'm not saying this is the Democrats going into 2026, but if they a party or a candidate that's going out there saying, hey, I'm here to protect your First Amendment rights by standing up for Jimmy Kimmel, and he got fired because of the Trump administration. That sounds like a good free speech argument, right? As long as you don't dig into the details, and you think, well, free speech, First Amendment. That's somebody who respects the Constitution.
Yeah, at surface level, it makes a great
Yeah.
soundbite.
And I think, I mean, this is almost certainly true of I don't want to say a majority because I don't know, but many Republicans and many Democrats going in who are either up for re-election or running for the first time to win a seat in either house, in either chamber, that they're all going to be making the case that they are the best defense of your constitutional rights. And even when they're on opposite sides. And so either one of them, at least, is lying to you. Or at worst, they're both lying to you.
I like that you said at least, because they can't both be telling the truth, but they
Yes.
can absolutely both be lying.
Yeah.
It is a possibility.
Yeah, it's like the two doors where you can ask one question of each of them.
Right.
One always lies. But yeah, here's the situation. They could both be lying. So what you end up with is an onslaught of information that much of it is likely false, much of it is sound bites, much of it is aided by the spin of the media, both sides, both sides of the aisle. They're always pushing for their guy or gal or them. I'm not sure what the
Zer or whatever.
Yeah, Zer. They're pushing for their Zer. There's Zer. No, well, we're getting the there in there as well. There's Zers. So they're always pushing for their individual ones. So the onslaught of misinformation that you end up with is mountainous in so many ways. So even if somebody thinks that they are, and I mean, I could be guilty of this myself, as could you. Even if we think that we're doing like the right research, finding who best represents, not me, right? I'm not an American citizen. I can't vote.
But hypothetically, if you were.
Hypothetically.
Right.
I get all this information, and I think that I'm voting for the candidate that best represents the chance for protecting the republic, strengthening the Constitution, and essentially looking down the path of freedom and liberty and saying that's where we're going.
Yeah.
We could all be wrong because
wrong.
of the misinformation. Well, not just misinformation, just the lenses through which we look.
That's why I always advocate. I mean, absolutely. And absolutely look at what the candidate and the party says they're going to do. But ignore the TV commercials, ignore the radio commercials, ignore the celebrity endorsements. None of that matters. That's all just election.
They're addressing, yeah.
And so if your candidate that you think you might be voting for has never held office before, all you can do is look at what the candidate says and what the party says. But that's why for anyone who's already held office, I mean, the fruits of their labor is public information. Find it. There's not a lot of way to spin that. There can be some, but I mean, you start looking at vote tallies and, okay, well, you voted for this and you voted against that, and just look at where you personally align on it. And that's the best advice I could give any voter is look at, for the ones who've already held office, look at what they voted on last time, because that's what they're going to support this time.
Jim, wise words indeed. Thanks ever so much for being here.
Been a pleasure, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides. And we're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's national security correspondent, Dave Patterson. Now, Dave, there's something that you and I have been wanting to discuss for a while, and that is Donald Trump's fairly recent message regarding Antifa. Now, I do want to delve a little bit into what Antifa is and why there are so many people saying it's not an organization, because it's besides its flag and its funding resource and things. But we'll get into that. But you brought up a fascinating point. Now, I'm just going to quote the what would you call it here? The truth, as Donald Trump calls it, a truth, right? So he wrote, quote, "I'm pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization." Dave, what stuck out to you there?
Well, what stuck out was that, you have foreign terrorist organizations. They're established in law, but we don't have any parallel, as best I can tell, parallel legislation that identifies domestic terrorist organizations. We use the term, and everybody has a pretty good idea as to what that means. But here we have Donald Trump, who alters that phrase by calling it a major terrorist organization. Now, you don't want to get caught up in verbiage and, parsing words so that suddenly all the meaning goes away anyway. But the fact is that I think that there is some reason to talk about that so that you have some sort of parallelism. You have foreign terrorist organizations and you have domestic terrorist organizations. What I believe is going to trip the administration up here is, and believe me, Antifa is a terrorist organization. The Summer of Love with BLM was a demonstration of how terrorist organizations actually do destroy property and kill people. And I would put BLM in that category as well, although that probably would raise a lot of hackles. But the fact is that at Antifa, although they like to push the idea that they're this loosely organized, kind of philosophically joined organization that basically are a bunch of anarchists, that simply is not true in application. And ask the people in Portland, Oregon every night if Antifa is not an organized organization on the streets of Portland.
So does that, do we end up talking about Antifa? It's a really important point about whether it's an organization or not, right? And I mean, it has a flag that people put, that they actually carry the flag. Because it's not just in America, of course, it's worldwide. That they carry a flag. They put these little flag symbols in their messages and things. They get funding for different events as well. Now, this is not always apparent tracks on these funding, but funds go towards the quote anti-fascist movement, and from a diverse array of sources as well, some of which are quite well known. But the very fact is that they organize. And so unless we're playing Bill Clinton's, it depends on what the meaning of is, something that organizes is therefore an organization, right?
Well, one would think.
Yeah, it may be decentralized, but so are most of the terrorist organizations in the world, aren't they, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. So here's the way it would be, I think, a reasonable way to think about this. If you've got Antifa in your town and they're throwing bricks through people's store windows and they have their flag, which reminds me of a Eddie Izzard comedy routine, but if they've got their flag and they're destroying property, starting fires, they are a terrorist organization. In the microcosm, you round them up and put them in jail. That's how easily you can identify that. I mean, you're a loosely organized group of people, but the group I'm looking at looks organized, and you're in trouble.
Yes. So yeah, if it's not an organization, how do they organize? And how do they all end up at the same place at the same time to create the chaos, the mayhem, and let's say what is the terror which they instill in the poor people who end up having to, if they're lucky, live through whatever they're doling out for their particular cause at the time. Now, so Donald Trump calls them a major terrorist organization. Now, as you rightly say, that there is a distinction and a difference between an FTO, foreign terrorist organization, domestic terrorist organization, and when he says a major terrorist organization. Now, it might just be a social media word salad. That's always possible. But I guess the question is, how does one combat, if you're the president of the United States and if you're Homeland Security, how do you deal with a quasi-organization that says it isn't organized and yet is wreaking havoc across the world?
Well, as I said, I mean, you deal with it on the local level. I mean, you got a flag, you got a bunch of people that are acting out, and they become the problem. And it may be 20 people, more than likely 100, oftentimes 200 people, and they're acting out and causing problems. And so, by virtue of the fact they've got a flag and they are doing things that terrorists do, then you round them up as terrorists.
But Dave, surely there's an optics issue, and this would be classed as mostly peaceful terrorism.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You watch too much CBS. But here is the fundamental problem. I mean, I think taking it down to its foundational issues, and that is we don't have legislation that identifies specifically how to go about doing this. And if Donald Trump wants to be effective in his identification of major terrorist organization, it needs legislation. It needs something very specific that lawyers can't weasel word their way out of.
Yeah, well, I mean, any legislation that comes through to designate or put in place plans to treat Antifa as a terrorist group will be challenged through the yazoo, I believe is the expression.
Yeah, I think, but see, that's why you don't use Antifa as the cause celeb. You use domestic terrorism,
yes,
and identify what that looks like. And when Antifa behaves that way, they become that by definition.
I mean, you pointed out earlier that the way to deal with this on an immediate level is through the local level. So, for example, you see 50 people firebombing the local ICE center, that kind of stuff, or sending fireworks at law enforcement while they're trying to do the job, while they're wearing the black garb, the Antifa flags, things like that. The issue there, Dave, is that these groups operate mostly in areas that would not recognize either A, Trump's authority to designate something a terrorist organization, B, would push back against the legislation. They're the ones that are going to be doing the lawsuits to stop any legislation coming through on this. And C, we know that they don't enforce actual laws anyway. And that's what's emboldened people like Antifa. We can go out, we can riot, we can burn things, and nothing will happen to us because the politicians are going to insist that we do not get charged because it's the voice of the oppressed crying out against the injustice of a capitalistic society.
I think the solution to that is that it becomes a federal problem. If you are spreading Antifa kinds of mayhem, that it's the federal law that you're breaking. Yeah, and by virtue of what you're doing, your behavior then identifies you as a domestic terrorist, and focusing on Antifa alone will not satisfy anybody. Sure. So you have to throw in all domestic terrorism and identify it and make the words very succinct and clear as to what domestic terrorism looks like, so that when you see it, it by its very nature is considered illegal, and it's a federal offense, not a local one.
So to push back a little on that, Dave.
You've been talking to Scott.
Oh, yeah. the true libertarian in our midst.
The true libertarian.
So to really push back, just really on the practicalities of it there, Dave, is if this were a federal issue, local state governments would wash their hands of it. Certain local state governments would wash their hands entirely of it. And all they do is make press conferences saying this is terrible. We've seen what happens when ICE goes into places to arrest people who've entered the country illegally and or committed crimes while they're here also. But if it's federal, then you're really playing a game of 50-state whack-a-mole, right? Because nobody wants to see permanent federal enforcement on the streets of every state permanently. Nobody wants to see that. So a terrorist group or like a group looking to riot, create mayhem and terror, they do something in one area and then they disappear. And then they do something in another area and then disappear. And surely what you'd end up with, short of putting out an entire federalized troop force to monitor every state, which we all agree, I think that's just a bad idea. What you end up with, it's almost like a low-level guerrilla warfare, isn't it?
Well, I think that also, their behavior identifies the organization, but they all have homes. They all go somewhere. And if you take your flag with you into your apartment or condo, you are an Antifa terrorist. And I think that initially, I think that the Trump administration is doing precisely the right thing, and that is they're going after the money.
Yeah.
And I think that's precisely right. But you get very little pushback when you start to diminish the flow of funds to these radical organizations. And again, not just Antifa. I mean, you have to broaden the scope of this so that you're not even picking on poor Antifa. But the fact is that they're doing the right thing, going after the money. And you've got these forensic accountants going. They finally come into their own. They're happy as clams now that they get to go do this stuff. And then when you go after and prosecute, I would think that, not being a lawyer but talking to Scott occasionally, I would think that they could. This is one area where RICO would really be appropriate. And from what I know about it.
Yeah, Trump has suggested something like that, I think. We're going to be back with Dave after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain Mark Angelides, and we continue our conversation with Liberty Nation's national security correspondent, Mr. Dave Patson. Dave, thank you for sticking around. Really appreciate it. I guess the topic we want to talk about now is what's happening with these this recent spate of bombings of drug boats. Give me your view from a 20,000-foot drone, Dave.
Well, first of all, it's pretty effective behavior modification. I think if you jump in your speedboat and load it up with narcotics, fentanyl, and cocaine, there's a very good chance now that you will not make it to your destination, and that you'll be embraced and kissed by a Hellfire missile, which will probably, in most cases, ruin your entire day.
Very much so. Very much so. So this is something actually quite different, though, isn't it? That from what we've seen in the past, even during the height of the war on drugs, which, congratulations, drugs, it appears you won. But actually targeting stuff before it's coming into the country rather than trying to seize it at the border or doing interdictions at specific places with the cooperation of those foreign governments. This seems to be, as you say, like just sending a huge message to anybody who's going to try and bring things in, isn't it?
Yes, but nonetheless, it's effective,
Yeah.
and it comports, I think, with the idea of foreign terrorist organizations, which is the rubric under which they have the administration has taken this particular approach. It's interesting that for the most part, people did not become very upset with taking out Soleimani and Arab terrorists. There was a little bit of a dust up, but nothing past a news cycle. But now all of a sudden, the people who are real terrorists and doing real terrorist things that have the potential of being very disruptive and destructive to the United States, killing as many as 250,000, of course, during the Biden administration through the spread of fentanyl and fentanyl-laced narcotics. President Trump has said, okay, first and foremost, cartels are foreign terrorist organizations. Therefore, as foreign terrorist organizations, we will use the full power of the United States in international waters in order to take them out. And it looks like that's been done very effectively.
Yeah, it's quite the legal process, isn't it? There's so much criticism of this, particularly from the political left, um, for doing this. And one of the main refrains I keep seeing, both on, let's call it the mainstream media, social media, even from elected politicians, is that what, we're just killing people indiscriminately now, and the first thing that popped into my head was, have you guys met Barack Obama? Do you remember this guy with his drone strikes, killing Lord knows how many
An American citizen,
people?
mind you.
Yeah, and that. And there was none of the same pushback. Sure, there was the occasional tutting, but it seemed that Barack Obama could do no wrong in certain eyes. And yet this, where he's gone through the process, as you say, the cartels are, President Trump's gone through the process of designating the cartels foreign terrorist organization. And that opens up, like, for anybody who plays any kind of video game from the 1990s, it opens up a menu of, these are the things you can do now. Walk forward, drop a bomb on them in international waters. It opens up that whole menu of actions that can be taken that are within the law of the land. And yet it's almost as though, and I don't want to apply malicious intent here, but it's almost as though they would rather the drugs arrive and then deal with what that is, and as you say, like 250,000 deaths, then make America look a little bit tougher than it is.
Well, I think that it's a case of not making America look more tougher than it is. It's making America look resolute, and of a single mind in terms of dealing with cartels. Now, I think that the left has a very big problem. They had 4 years to do nothing. They had 4 years to cause the problem.
Apparently, that's not what they were voted in for, by the way. Nothing. Although some
I
people
don't believe that.
There's an argument to be made that we vote people in and they're not allowed to do anything for 4 years, we'd be in a much better position. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, we found out that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And the left has like I say, they have a very difficult situation. All they do is attack. They don't provide any sort of positive solutions themselves because they don't have any. And so when someone actually does something that is a positive and proactive is the word I think is the most appropriate, proactively deals with a problem that is causing the deaths of Americans, then if they have a big problem. But they don't have any solutions themselves. This has been the perennial issue between conservatives and liberals. Liberals seldom have any sort of a solution, whereas conservatives tend to be proactive. I always used to proactive with issues and proactive in finding solutions. But in politics, of course, the Republicans need to look at the playbook for the Democrats. I always make the comment that the Democrats go to knife fights with guns. Republicans go to lunch.
And on that note, I think that's probably something we can all agree on. Dave Patterson, thanks ever so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be with you.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. I'd like to thank our special guests today, Mr. Jim Fight and Dave Patterson, for taking the time to join us. And of course, thank you, the listeners at home, who take the time each week to tune in. You are appreciated. Now, please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse campaigns, candidates, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.